So, Dean, I'll let you explain first. How did you learn of what happened in Colfax, Louisiana, and how did you feel once you understood your place in that story?
Well, I like to read. I read both fiction and nonfiction. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, I picked up a book by Lalita Tatamy called Red River. And she's written a couple of books, Red River and Cane River, and she's been highlighted on Oprah's show. And so I was reading it. It's about the history of central Louisiana around Colfax, where her family kind of was from. And the story, Red River, was the fictionalized account of the Colfax Massacre that happened on April 13th, 1873, Easter Sunday. And of course, a lot more to it than just that one day. But my grandparents and my father were from Montgomery, Louisiana, which is about 15, 20 miles north of Colfax. So it gave me I was curious as to whether or not I was related. My family was involved in any way, or at least, did they know about it and everything? I'd never heard anything about it, and my parents and never talked about it. My grandmother, who was from Montgomery, never talked about it. So I started researching it, and I read a nonfiction account by Charles Lane called "The Day Freedom Died" and the End of Reconstruction, and learned all the true facts of what happened that around that time. And it just really interested me. So I went online to ancestry.com and did some research for my upline and found my great grandfather, a guy named Bedford Woods. And he was never mentioned to me or my sister in my life. My grandfather had died before we were born, so I never knew him. But my father and my mother certainly knew Bedford because he lived way after. Had lived on 1931, I think, and they were both in their teen years or older by then, so they knew him well, and they never mentioned his name to us. So I went further. I found his obituary, and in his obituary, it said he was a proud veteran of the Colfax race riot, and that just floored me. I mean, I could not believe it, and I expected him to be, at least contemporaneous to the event because he was born in 1851, so he was 20, 21 years old or so, maybe 22 when it happened, and so that just floored me. Eventually, my son found an article in from 1912 or 14 in the Colfax Chronicle that said they had a reunion of the veterans of the Colfax race riot, and they elected him treasurer of the group. So you had to be a true fighting veteran to be in this group. And so I knew he had to be involved in some way. And it just floored me. I was just, embarrassed. And I didn't even know how to tell my kids, Harley and my wife, because what do you do when you find out your upline, your ancestor was involved in one of the worst one of the worst massacres in American history that changed the world so much, changed the country so much. There was a sign, a marker in downtown Colfax called the Colfax riot, and it said that that 150 Negroes had died and 3 white men had been killed in the in this event marked the end of carpetbag misrule in the South, and I felt like that was a racist and inaccurate marker, and I went over there and took pictures of it and tried to figure out what some way get this thing taken down. Long story short, I talked to a lady down in Baton Rouge who was the assistant secretary of the Department of Economic Development, who's in that department is in charge of the historical markers in the state, and she's an African American woman who very talented and she very connected. She knew the governor, and she went to him, and he agreed to get it taken down. She went to the police jury in Colfax, who in Grant Parish, they're in charge of the operations of the parish, and they made decisions about land, and this thing was on their land, and they felt like they owned it. But when they found out from her they didn't own it, and after a little bit of a legal back and forth, they finally agreed to let us take it down. So on May 15th, 2021, Avery's brother was hired by me to go and take it down. And we had a big event there. We filmed it. And it was a wonderful day to see that thing come down and get thrown in the back of a pickup truck and taken to Lafayette. It's going to be eventually put in a African American museum somewhere in New Orleans or Baton Rouge, and with proper context. That day, I met Constance, Avery's wife, and Avery was gone doing a funeral, and we were filming that day, trying to make a documentary. And she said Avery's already working on a documentary with a man up in New York. So the next day, Avery and I met on the phone, and we talked to the filmmaker in New York, and I agreed to give him the footage that I'd filmed. And he's working on a film now that will hopefully be shown PBS next year about the massacre. So later, Avery and I met, and the rest is history.